Good evening. Would you stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please? Rock.
Now let's pray. Our Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for watching over us, keeping us safe, Father. We thank you for the council members here, Lord. We just pray that you watch over them, watch over the citizens of Vienna, Father, and I pray that you will protect those who serve in Vienna, Father, to keep us safe, Father. The policemen, the fire people, we just pray that you watch over them, Lord. Continue to bless this country, Father. Bless everything that we do, and just thank you again for all you've done for us, Lord. These things we ask you.
Amen. Mr. Stockstead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for April the 27th, 2023. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present. Having a quorum, we will proceed. First item on our agenda this evening is our public forum. We have two that have signed up to speak. First this evening will be Barbara Gelpe. Huh?
I omitted something last time. I wanted to thank you for those nicely paved roads. Organizing that was wonderful. Appreciated that very much. I just have to say that had I known, I wouldn't have purchased the house that I have if I'd understood this was what was going to be coming in. And I may be the person that my next door neighbor and I are probably the people that are most adversely affected by the presence of a business rather than a residential area. And I just, I wish you no ill will. You have no idea how that bothers me. You have a good work going, but if I can help you find another place, maybe I could do that. I would be willing to. I just am disconcerted. I didn't anticipate we'd have a gambling joint down the road, and of course that's not in Vienna, but it's pretty darn close. And to see these things happening, driving by a vape shop that advertises edible vapes. Who's that for? Kids in my school. That's who that's for. I want to protect the kids, and I worry about that. Protect property values, and don't want a lot of strangers coming and going in my backyard. So I will shut up. Thank you very much. I appreciate that you listened.
Amy Rhodes.
Before we get started, I'd like to ask for extra time because I know I'm not going to finish this in 5 minutes.
I vote no. We have a meeting.
I know, but our public hearing was cut very short.
I mean, you had 5 full minutes.
I move that we extend her time, basically because nobody was told what the format was or how much time they would really have in advance of the public hearing. Mm-hmm. So obviously, Ms. Rhodes is trying to make up for her time in the public. Are you
making a motion, Ms. Williams?
I'm making the motion to extend her time by 3 minutes.
Is it seconded?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an extension for Ms. Rhodes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? You have 5 minutes, Ms. Rhodes.
Okay, I'm going to skip to a couple different things here. This is part of the comprehensive plan, work with Grand Central owners to implement a mixed-use area. And again, it states to buffer residential areas from commercial areas. I want to say right off that this issue should never have gotten this far. It was not discussed in the Planning Commission. It was not recommended to be rezoned by the Planning Commission. It was stated to make a motion to forward that to council for consideration. Those are all in the videotapes on Brenda Powell's site, United Citizens of Vienna. Anyone can watch those. Anyone can see how it was worded and what happened. Mr. Shaw, in his application, stated several things that his rezoning was consistent with. But everything that he stated is to help attract new businesses. He did not state anything from the comprehensive plan that supports rezoning that. So attracting new businesses is every city's goal. Every city wants new businesses. So that is not anything different, and it's different ways. In the information I gave you is the West Virginia University document on spot zoning. And if you read that, it is clear that this is spot zoning. And spot zoning can be illegal, and courts are going to look at this as questionable. In the Planning Commission meetings, it was talked the 7 different things that courts look at in determining the validity of a zoning ordinance. I have gone through those. My words are a little bit different because all the different Supreme Court cases stated a different way. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? No. Is the requested use or zoning significantly different from the existing uses and zoning of the surrounding area? Yes. This is an R2 zone. It is all residential, single-family homes, possibly duplexes, and a church. Will property values be diminished in the particulars by the particular zoning restrictions? And yes, that will happen. Not very many people want to be beside a commercial building. You don't know what's going in there. There's no guarantee of anything. I know she wants to put a mission in, and I think it's a great idea, but she even said she doesn't know how long she'll be there. That building does not need to be commercial to have that clothing ministry in there. I contacted the state tax department and talked to them, and I forwarded that email to Mr. Shaw, and so he knows that it doesn't have to be zoned commercial for a clothing ministry either. There will be no decrease in property value for Mr. Shaw if this property is not zoned commercial. The upper apartment is currently rented. The bottom of that would be an excellent revamped apartment space. The potential decrease in property values can result in the lessening of general welfare and well-being of the residents nearby. Those living nearby would be affected by a lessening sense of financial security and may be affected in other ways as a result of a decrease in property value when selling their homes. Is the proposed change benefiting private persons rather than the public? Yes. The only person that this benefits is the owner of the property. Is there a relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual property owner? No hardship exists for the property owner requesting to change his property, as a property would need to be renovated regardless of its use. He will enjoy rental income from a downstairs apartment. The public will not likely to benefit from a commercial business. It is limited in potential for lots of various reasons, including size, parking, location, the fact that it's need to travel further out to get to that property. They've owned that property since November, and they still aren't actively renovating that property. So I don't know what that is, if they really wanted that ministry to go in there, why that hasn't progressed a little bit further. It's really no business. I'm sure they have the reasons. What is the length of time the property has been vacant?
Mr. Rhodes, your time is up.
I just think this is really a bad way to have a public hearing on such an important thing.
Sorry, Mr. Shaw, we're past that. The minutes from the regular council meeting on April 13th and the special council meeting on April the 18th, 2023 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Mr. Skogstad noticed a couple of items that are not really related to the minutes, but they are the attendance.
Yeah, I corrected those.
They are corrected
They
now.
are corrected, yes.
But there's nothing, Mr. Skogstad, there's nothing dealing with the actual meeting itself. So there's been 2 corrections to the roll call that was there. Other than that, the minutes are as they stand. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, then the minutes will stand approved as posted. Report of the treasurer will be given at the first meeting in May. And we move on this evening. We have no unfinished business. We go into new business. The first item on our agenda this evening is an ordinance on first reading. Mr. Leach, you are our liaison to the Planning Commission. There were some comments made earlier that if you would you address what you recall from that meeting and the actions of the Planning Commission, please?
Well, first of all, I didn't watch Brenda's Facebook page, so I may not be quite as familiar and remember. But when things come before the Planning Commission, just as with budget and finance, if the discussion is had by the Planning Commission and then a motion and a second are required to consider whether to send it to council, the motion and second were obtained, and it was unanimous vote to forward this. My sense of it is that and there's quite a bit of discussion. I disagree with Ms. Rhodes, about the uses of this property, the comprehensive plan, the character of the effort that's being made, not just with respect to the folks that are here seeking approval of this, but also to the future uses. And so I believe the Planning Commission did forward this to council with its blessing.
All right. So we have an ordinance on first reading. It's the rezoning all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Addition, 5708 Grand Central Avenue, from residential to C1 commercial. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that with the advice of the City of Vienna Planning Commission from their meeting held on 12/19/22 at 5:30 p.m., and with the finding that said rezoning is consistent with the City of Vienna's adopted comprehensive plan, all that certain property located at 5708 Grand Central Avenue, Vienna, Wood County, West Virginia, more completely described as all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Addition, as set out in a deed recorded in the office of the clerk of the Wood County Commission, deed book 1349, page 528, is rezoned from its present classification of residential to the zoning classification as C1 commercial. Further, it is ordered that the official zoning map be updated to reflect the new zoning classification. I'll entertain a motion on first reading for the approval of the ordinance rezoning all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Addition from residential to C1 commercial.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we rezone the lots from residential to commercial. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question. The way this ordinance is written, it says, with the finding that said rezoning is consistent with the City of Vienna's adopted comprehensive plan. I think that's key. That's certainly part of what we look at when we consider the spot zoning. I talked to the city code enforcement officer, and I asked him, how is this consistent with the comprehensive plan? Because I've read the comprehensive plan, and I can't find where it's consistent at all. I can find where it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. And he couldn't advise me of where it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I think that's very important. And I mean, we have to look at things with, you know, what we legally can do and what should be done, and not the emotional part of it. Because I just want to say this, that I think the Shaws are good intentioned people, and they want to take a piece of property, redo it, and make it, you know, a productive piece of property. You stated that. And I believe that's your intention. But if you go back to like the spot zoning and it says, you know, hey, you can't benefit, it's not for the benefit of the owner. It's how does it benefit the community? And I'm not really sure how it benefits the neighbors in that area. And certainly we have a neighbor here who's very concerned about that. So that gives me pause. The other thing that really concerns me is that our business commercial district ends at 34th Street. This is clear up at 57th Street. This is kind of going to be a little fish out of water because we are just specifically zoning for this one piece of property, which is 2 parcels. It's, there's nothing around it, you know, there's no other businesses around it. So I think that you can have a business that can be probably not a very big impact on the community as far as the hustle and bustle of daily business, you know, the traffic that you're concerned about and people coming in and out of the neighborhood that you're concerned about, and I totally understand that. But once we zone this commercial, it's forever zoned commercial. You can't undo it. And I know that well, I guess you can go through the process again, and I'm sure nobody wants to do that. So we're making it less restrictive, okay, by zoning it commercial. And I attended all those planning commission meetings starting in October when the Shaws first came, and you know, Mrs. Shaw talked about the clothing ministry, and I think that's a really awesome thing to do, and I applaud her for those efforts. And once again, and Ms. Rhodes made this comment that, you know, she doesn't have to have a commercial, the property does not have to be a commercial property to be used as storage, for her to have people come in and for her to give away clothes. It's not a business. So I guess I don't really see why we should zone it commercial, other than, you know, it will give the Shaws a great benefit, but that's not how you should look at it. You have to look at it to the benefit of the entire neighborhood and the neighbors who bought a house in what they assumed was going to be, you know, a commercial-free zone. It was a residential zone. So I'm also, because we don't know exactly what's going in there, once again, I reached out to the code enforcement officer and asked, you know, what's the parking situation going to be like? Because I don't know very much about those kinds of things, but I think the parking is really challenging there. And one of the reasons it's so challenging there is because I parked my car in front of the building, and I measured it. It was 21 feet from the building to Grand Central, which is a state road, Route 14, right? So you cannot back out into a state road. So you can't really use the front for parking. I guess you could if you did it parallel, but then, you know, you have the lot. I don't know how much parking you can get in there, but all that parking, 4 spaces, all that parking is going to be determined on what kind of a business you're going to put in there as far as requirements.
No, you can't. Thank you.
So that brings up a big safety concern for me. I'm going to show you a picture, okay? I hadn't planned on showing this picture, but I'm going to do it anyway. It was just timing, and I happened to be there. That's my little Mazda, and you can see I parked relatively close to the building, enough room that somebody could walk in front of me if they needed to get into the building. And you can see how far the rear of my car is. It's almost to the edge of Grand Central. But it happened to be 3 o'clock that day, and That's the school traffic for folks trying to pick up their kid at Greenmont School. So there are concerns for me about the safety, the parking, the traffic, all the same concerns I think the neighbors are going to have. And I don't know why we're rushing into doing this right now, because there's no, they don't even know what they want to do with it, you know? Regarding turning it into an apartment, you know, that's done all over the country and has been for decades. And here's some examples of how good. I'm trying to find something here that reminds me of that building. This has been turned into an apartment. I think you could turn it into an apartment, and you know, you're in the real estate business, you're in the investment business, and so this would give you be able to generate some income on that building. The building's productive. I know that you're going to fix it up. It already looks better since when the for sale sign was there. You've done some work on it. But so I think just to make it a standalone commercial piece of property that's, you know, almost, I don't know, 25 blocks away from where our commercial district ends, it kind of is, like I said, it's sort of a fish out of water. But there's lots of things that can be done to turn that into an apartment, be productive, and as was mentioned earlier, there's a critical need for apartments in the Mid Ohio Valley. So I don't think that you would have any trouble renting it. People especially like to rent in Vienna, so that's my comments.
Are you done?
I'm finished.
Okay. Any further comments? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the ordinance rezoning all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Edition, 5708 Grand Central Avenue, from residential to C1 commercial on first reading, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Let the record reflect it passes 6-1. That's first reading. We will revisit this on our meeting on May the 11th.
Mayor, and just between now and the next reading, I advise council, I think that whenever there's, zoning ordinances are not absolute. The statute says the governing body, which is council, with the advice of the planning commission. So the planning commission doesn't have to make the finding, but I believe the governing body does, that if you're going to adopt the ordinance and grant the zoning variance, that you have to have a showing that is consistent with a comprehensive plan. I sent council the same 7 bullet points that I sent to the planning commission, and I think that, and I don't necessarily tonight is fine, but I think before the ultimate adoption, I think each of those 7 things need to be addressed, because you have to create a record. So you have to consider what the existing uses of the nearby property are, the extent to which any property values are diminished by the present restriction, the extent to which the destruction of the property value that, in this case, the shoals would be suffering, versus how it promotes the health, safety, morals, general welfare of the public, the relative gain of the public compared to the hardship imposed on the owner, the suitability of the subject property for the zone purpose, the length of the time the property has been vacant as zoned, considered the context of land development in the area. So for tonight, I think it's fine, but I think that at the next council meeting, I think it would be prudent for council to address those issues so that an appropriate record is created, so that the council's decision has the opportunity to survive a challenge, if there is one, to it. And as far as just in general on the adopted comprehensive plan, I mean, none of these things are definitive. I can't point to one thing and say, nope, it doesn't do that, or it does do that. All of these things are going to be subjective, and my recommendation is for council to be able to articulate, if you're for it, why you're for it in the context of these 7 things, and if you're against it, why you're against it in the context of the 7 things, so as to create a record. And I'm not here to say that you should or should not approve it. I'm saying that in order for council to do what I believe that it needs to do, it needs to address all of those. That's the case law that I've dealt with in looking at that, including the last case which created the seventh, that says you have to consider the adopted comprehensive plan. Those are the issues that the courts are looking at. So that's just my suggestion.
To the extent you want it on the record tonight, I've already gone through these 7 points and made my notes. And so I think maybe not tonight, but I certainly will be prepared to discuss my reasoning on the second reading.
Would you be willing to share those with the rest of the council?
Yes.
If you would, then we'll take a look at those. And then we'll address Russ's concerns at the next meeting on second reading. All right?
I have a question about your concerns, Russ. So if these 7 things cannot be justified, what are you saying? Then the courts, if somebody mounted a challenge, then the courts could overturn the ruling of the council?
The court could
Any court, any person that makes a challenge to these things, it could either prevail or it could be overturned, depending on what the situation is. I think it's incumbent upon council to create a record to specifically say why they are for or against the project, so that the court can look at those things, look at that record, and then make a determination that council has at least met the bare minimum requirements because the courts typically aren't going to overturn a council's decision if it believes that council has acted appropriately, whether it's for or against it, or whether it's acted consistently with the law. So that's why I'm suggesting that you try to address those 7 issues, because then the court, if you don't address the 7 issues that the Supreme Court has set out as things that they're looking at, then the Supreme Court is going to go the next step. The first step is they're not going to disturb the findings of council if council has essentially met these 7 requirements, whatever that decision is. But if council doesn't meet those 7, and there's a case that specifically says that. But if council doesn't articulate those 7 things, then the court is going to look beyond that, and they may uphold your decision or they may overturn your decision, but it gives the court the ability to look beyond that and say, well, we think that because there's a commercial district outside of town within 100 yards of it, then, it's consistent with the area. Or, and I can give you other examples, but I hope you understand my point. And so there's a cutoff of what the courts can look at. If council articulates the 7 and makes a finding based on those 7, then that makes it a lot harder for a court to overturn the council's decision.
And that's an abuse of discretion standard.
I believe it is an abuse of discretion standard, yes.
They'd have to find we abused our discretion.
Okay, so take a look at the 7 things that Russ has put in there, and we'll, if you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to me before the next meeting, and we'll take a look at those, and we'll see what Mr. Leach has come up with. Mr. Bibby and I are the only 2 that have been here long enough that were involved in the last comprehensive plan, and so we'll take a look at that for a research portion, and then we'll get an answer. All right, Russell? Okay. All right. So we move on this evening. The second item on our agenda this evening is a resolution to adopt and implement the City of Vienna emergency plan. This plan is on the forefront, in my opinion, because of the train derailments and what have you that have been happening around the country. And so we took our emergency plan and we went through it front to back. And we have updated it with all the current phone numbers. We've eliminated some of the agencies that are no longer in existence. It's been reviewed by both the police and fire department because they are the first responders. And everything that is in this document appears to be as correct as we can make it. The phone numbers are accurate, the information that's there. There were a couple items that were tweaked in this process. Just simply phone numbers, emergency contacts, etc. Basically, it's exactly the same as the one that the county commission has before them, which we presented, I believe, 2 years ago. But it is updated with all the current information in it now. And so I would read the resolution. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby adopts and implements the attached emergency plan for the City of Vienna. Further, the city resolves to allow the mayor and or his designee to update contact information, website address, social media accounts, office holders, news media contacts, and the like as relates to the emergency plan without ordinance or resolution to reflect the most current and accurate information. The last time that we did this update was when council changed, and so we updated all the information to include all of the current information. So I would entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution to adopt and implement the City of Vienna emergency plan.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution to adopt and implement the City of Vienna emergency plan. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a comment. In looking over this plan, and one of the things that I've kind of identified over several years in that field is that in a disaster, I think one of the most important things is to know where your resources are and how to get them. And, you know, this plan, appeared to have an abundance of resource information in there, which I think is going to be key to if it ever has to be enacted and put into place. So,
Okay.
good job.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution to adopt and implement the City of Vienna emergency plan, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. I will now get on the county commission's agenda and present it to them for them to sign off as well. And then it will be recorded as an official document and placed in the repository at the library for anyone that would like to review that document. All right, that concludes our council agenda this evening. Are there council comments?
I have a council question. Mayor, you said at the utility board meeting that the new comprehensive plan is ready. We're just waiting on to be presented to council for adoption?
Close.
Close.
All of the writing has been done. He's got some graphs and some pictures that need to be attached to that document. But as far as the actual research and everything, it is completed. Then we're going to attach our emergency plan to that, and we're going to attach our 5-year plan from the utility board in that document as well.
Okay, that sounds great. Do you have a time frame for that?
I expect it any day. Okay, it's done. All it needs to be done now is just polish it. So
Okay, so I mean, you know, it wasn't created by any stakeholders here, so I was just curious if any of that new comprehensive plan has changed regarding land use, et cetera, versus the old comprehensive plan that we were discussing tonight in regards to, you know, the Shaw's request.
we went into the housing study with the city of Parkersburg and Wood County, and that housing study has been included in our document. All right, and so. And I hate to say this because I'm going to have to go back and research it myself. As I said a minute ago, Roger and I were the only two that were here. I don't believe the comprehensive plan addresses that. And so when Russ is asking us to go back in there and look for specifics, I'll have to do my research on that, Kim, because I just don't remember.
Oh, yeah, you mean the comprehensive plan touching on like land use, et cetera?
Oh, no, I know that's in there, but I don't believe that particular address at 5708 Grand Central was ever addressed as far as the way it is, okay?
No, it wasn't, because they talked about, you know, the business district, the old business district, and what's the newer one, which is down by the mall, all the box stores, et cetera. It didn't have anything to do with up on 57th Street.
Right. So, at any rate, my opinion on this, and I'll wait for everybody to get in it, but the stipulation that Russ has in there about the comprehensive plan, I don't think it applies. And so we'll do the research and see what Mr. Leach has found, but then we'll get back and we'll discuss it.
Okay.
All right? Any other council comments this evening?
I have one if nobody else does. So first of all, following up the question about at Spencer's Landing, I talked with Rebar and he said he didn't think there was a requirement to notify if we were not working in a protected area. After that meeting, Derek did call me back and he said there's no formality required. And he said, I don't think this isn't come up for you guys because every time you do anything down there, you just call us, give me a heads up, and that's fine. He said really the only reason for the notice is so that they know activities going on and that there's, and that it's not in a restricted area. And again, also to clarify, we can work in restricted areas. It's just an additional level of requirements by the DP, the HAZWOPER supervision, things like that. So I think it's kind of both, right? You know, he said there's not like a formal request or notice requirement or wait from them. He said an email, a phone call, or whatever. He said he appreciates it as courtesy. So I think that we have done and need to continue in good form to keep them involved whenever we're doing even like full development or whatever we're doing down there. So that's the update on that. And then one other comment, you know, with some of the discussions about the concerns about the use of this property on 57th Street, I think there's some misinformation. You're not allowed to sell alcohol north of 20th Street, correct? Already, all right? The restrictions already with respect to the zoning ordinance by being located across the street from the church impose additional restrictions. The deed restrictions that are in the deed that was executed by the grantees imposes additional restrictions. For example, we recently had a discussion about the vape shops. So that property is pretty restricted. And in fact, if you noticed in the deed, it at the end said the grantor had even agreed to, and that's the seller. I got it. The grantors do hereby covenant that they will execute such further assurances of the said lands as may be requisite. And the so I think that you know, I think that saying that there have been comments about certain types of businesses could go in there if they no longer own it. I don't believe that's correct, not without actually approving it by council and or, you know, in violation of the terms of the covenants in the deed as if they appear on their face. I talked with Russ earlier today about this, and he said there might be some backflip method straw man conveyances that may be used to defeat those covenants in the deed, and that perhaps some type of an assurance that the city of Vienna was in essence a third-party beneficiary to those covenants may remove that possibility. And this was late this afternoon. I don't do property law, and I didn't fully understand, but I think that if there's something there, you know, that we didn't do our due diligence to say, you know, this is a lock. All right, this is limited use what this property can be used for. I talked with the property owners. They had no objection if there was some further assurance like that they could do, because I think their intent is consistent with what this deed says.
Mr. Shaw, I know that through this process, because I've also been to all the planning commission meetings, that you seem to have been very cooperative and receptive to suggestions to make this as non-intrusive into the neighborhood as you can. Whenever you all get ready to refurbish this, you will have to work with our zoning people, building permits, etc., and submit drawings and what have you in relation to the parking issues and what have you. I think that the pictures that Ms. Williams showed tonight show that you absolutely can do great things with that if that's your intent, okay? And I know that from my perspective, that building has sat empty for 20 years. And when you look at the neighborhood and what it is, I believe that the best and practical use of that building can be improved greatly. And so I think it will be an asset if it is done in the correct way. So just make sure that when you start your process that you submit your plans and you do everything. And we have a very quick turnaround, so we won't delay you, but you will have to do it right. Okay. Kevin's your man. All right. Anything else this evening? All right. Meeting adjourned.